For 11 years, they told me I ruined my sister's life. I believed them. I paid for it with every dollar, every dream, every quiet night alone. I stood at that accident like a criminal who never touched the wheel, and I carried their lie like a sentence carved into my bones. My name is Lauren Whitmore. I'm 32 years old, and I live in Cleveland, Ohio, in a half-basement apartment that never fully sees daylight. The ceiling hums when my upstairs neighbor does laundry. The windows sit at ankle level to the sidewalk. I tell myself it's temporary, but I've been telling myself that for 11 years. Most of my paycheck disappears the moment it arrives. Transfers to my parents, payments for my sister's treatments, therapy, tuition, equipment, emergencies that somehow are always my responsibility. I work as a risk analyst at a financial firm, a job that looks impressive on paper, yet I live like someone constantly apologizing for existing, because that's what my family taught me to do. They taught me that I destroyed Megan's future. Every time I close my eyes, I'm 21 again. Senior year, one semester away from graduating, job interviews lined up, a future that finally felt real. It was supposed to be a short break, just a few days back home. Just one favor. Megan was 16 then, all sharp emotions and restless ambition. Ballet wasn't just something she loved, it was who she was. Her entire world revolved around mirrors, bruised toes, and auditions that decided whether she mattered. That morning, she barely spoke to me. She was angry about something small, a friend, a costume. At 16, everything feels like the end of the world. It was raining when we left the house. Not a storm. Just enough to make the roads slick and reflective. My mom tossed me the keys and said, "Drive carefully." I always did. The dance center was in Lakewood, about 20 minutes away. We stopped at a gas station halfway there. I remember the smell of wet asphalt. I remember counting cash, trying to decide if I could afford both gas and coffee. I remember leaving the keys in the ignition because I was going to be inside for less than a minute. When I came back out, the car was gone. For a second, my brain refused to accept it. I stood there, staring at the empty space like the universe had glitched. Then I saw the taillights turning onto the road. I ran. I screamed her name. My shoes slipped on the pavement. A truck honked as it swerved around me. She made it less than half a mile. The call came fast. Too fast. A crash on the curve near the intersection. One vehicle. Severe injuries. I don't remember the drive to the hospital. I remember the smell of antiseptic, the bright lights, the way my hands wouldn't stop shaking. They said she was lucky. That word kept coming up. Lucky to be alive. Lucky she'd walk again. Lucky it wasn't worse. But luck doesn't matter when someone needs a villain. In the waiting room, my mother gripped my arm hard enough to leave crescent marks. Her voice was low, urgent, rehearsed. "The police report says you were driving," she whispered. "That's what we need them to believe." I tried to speak. I tried to explain. My father stepped in before I could. He answered questions for me. He told the officer I was confused. That trauma does that to people. When I opened my mouth again, my mother's nails dug into my sleeve until my skin burned. "She's in shock," my dad said calmly. "You understand." And just like that, the truth disappeared. I became the reckless sister, the careless one, the daughter who came home from college and destroyed everything. They told the doctors, the insurance company, the relatives, the neighbors, and eventually they told me. How could I think about school when Megan couldn't even dance anymore? How could I accept job offers when my sister's life was shattered? How could I be happy when she was learning how to walk again? So I didn't. I withdrew from classes. I ignored emails. I moved back home. I started paying, not once or twice, every month, every year. I paid because I believed I deserved to. Megan never had to say it out loud. My parents said enough for all of us. Every dinner, every holiday, every quiet pause was filled with the same unspoken sentence. You owe her. And for 11 years, I did exactly what they asked. I paid. I stayed silent. I let my life shrink around a lie I thought was the truth. I didn't know then that everything I believed was already broken. I just hadn't seen the cracks yet. I told myself the sacrifices were temporary. One semester off. One missed opportunity. 1 year to help my family recover. That's how it started. That's how they sold it to me. Temporary has a way of stretching when guilt is involved. I never went back to finish school. At first, it was because Megan needed surgeries, then physical therapy, then specialized equipment. Every time I mentioned returning, my mother's face tightened, like I'd just insulted her. "How can you even think about that?" she'd say, voice trembling on command, "when your sister is still learning how to live again?" So I stopped thinking about it. I found remote work, entry-level analysis for a small financial firm that didn't ask too many questions. It paid less than what I'd been offered before, but it fit my new role. The daughter who stays close, the sister who makes amends. I told myself proximity was responsibility. In reality, it was control. More than half my income went out the door before I ever saw it. Transfers on the first of every month, surgeries, therapy sessions, online tuition when Megan decided campus life was too painful emotionally, rent when my parents said things were tight, repairs, emergencies. There were always emergencies. I kept spreadsheets, detailed ones, color-coded, dates, amounts, descriptions. It started as organization. It turned into proof of penance. Every cell felt like a confession. Every total felt like interest accruing on a debt I could never fully pay. At family dinners, the accident never needed to be mentioned directly. It hovered over the table like a third parent. My father would sigh over his drink and say, "Your sister could have been on a stage right now." My mother would nod, eyes flicking toward me, then away. Megan rarely spoke, but when she did, it was surgical. "I'm grateful for what I still have," she'd say softly. "Some people don't even get that." Her hand would rest on her leg just long enough to be noticed. Everyone praised her strength. No one questioned the performance. Megan learned how to tell her story beautifully. She posted photos of her recovery, then of her art, then of her speaking engagements. "Turning pain into purpose," the captions read. Donations followed, invitations, applause. She started traveling, retreats, workshops, places I'd never been because I couldn't afford to miss work or stop sending money home. I watched her life expand while mine shrank. Every time she succeeded, my parents framed it as proof that my sacrifices mattered. "See," my mother would say, scrolling through Megan's posts, "this is why we had to pull together. This is why you had to step up." Step up meant stepping aside, again and again. I stopped dating because it was easier than explaining why I lived like a ghost. The few times I tried, it never lasted. Men would ask simple questions. Why I couldn't take weekends away. Why I flinched when money came up. Why I talked about my sister like I was on trial. One of them told me, gently, that it felt like I was serving a sentence. I laughed it off. I didn't realize how right he was. Friends drifted away. I canceled plans, missed weddings, declined invitations. There was always a reason. Megan needed something. My parents needed help. Family comes first. That phrase became a leash. At night, after work, I stared at my spreadsheets instead of my future. I calculated what I could sell next. A ring, a savings account, a dream. Each time I told myself it was the last adjustment. Each time it wasn't. The worst part wasn't the money. It was the way my guilt was kept sharp. My mother had a talent for it. "You know," she'd say casually, "your sister never complains. She could have been bitter, but she's so forgiving." Forgiving. The word cut deeper than anger ever could. Megan leaned into it. "I don't blame you," she'd whisper sometimes, always loud enough for someone else to hear. "I know you didn't mean it." The implication hung there, heavy and poisonous. Forgiveness requires a crime, and I'd accepted mine without question. I began to believe happiness was something other people earned. I ran early mornings until my lungs burned because physical pain felt cleaner than shame. I worked late because numbers didn't judge. Spreadsheets didn't look at me like I owed them my life. My world narrowed to obligations and silence. I stopped asking what I wanted. I stopped imagining who I could have been. I became very good at surviving quietly. For years, I thought this was redemption. I thought this was love. I thought carrying everyone else was the price of being part of a family. I didn't know yet that what they called loyalty was really extraction. I didn't know yet that my life hadn't been paused by the accident. It had been taken. The request from the insurance company came on a Tuesday afternoon, buried in an email I almost ignored. They needed an original copy of the accident report, certified, unamended. Something about a routine audit. Another form, another errand. Another reminder that the past never really stays buried. My parents' fax machine was acting up, as usual. My mother sighed dramatically over the phone and said, "Could you just go get it in person? You're better with paperwork." That's what I'd become to them. The fixer, the runner, the one who handled things quietly. So I took a day off work for the first time in years and drove downtown to the Cuyahoga County Police Records Building. The place smelled like dust and old paper. Flickering fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting everything in a tired yellow haze. Metal filing cabinets lined the walls like gravestones. A bored clerk slid a clipboard toward me without looking up. "Year?" he asked. 11 years ago, I said. "October." "Hey," he raised an eyebrow, then shrugged. "Basement archives." I followed him down a narrow staircase that felt like it led backward in time. My footsteps echoed. My pulse did too. We stopped in front of a long table. He returned with 2 folders and set them down between us. Same case number, same date. But one was thin, barely a few pages. I recognized it instantly. The report my parents had shown everyone for over a decade. The one that named me as the driver. The other folder was thick. "That one never got digitized," the clerk said casually. "Must have been misfiled." Misfiled. The word hit me harder than it should have. He opened the thin folder first. 2 pages. Clinical, neat, efficient. Driver listed as Lauren Whitmore. Speed noted. Weather conditions. Injury severity. End of story. The lie I'd been living. Then he opened the thick one. My stomach dropped. Photographs spilled across the table. The wrecked car from angles I'd never seen. The twisted metal. The interior. And then something small but devastating jumped out at me. The driver's seat. Pushed far forward. Too far for someone my height. The mirrors angled down. Wrong. All wrong. My hands started to shake. There were witness statements. A delivery driver who reported seeing a teenage girl behind the wheel. A gas station employee confirming I was inside paying when the car left. Timestamps. Camera stills from the station. Grainy, but clear enough. Me at the counter. Megan in the driver's seat. The clerk cleared his throat. "You okay, ma'am?" I couldn't answer. Then I saw the handwritten notes. Pages of them. The responding officer had been thorough. Obsessive even. Measurements. Diagrams. Seat position analysis compared to recorded heights. Megan's height. My height. Conclusions drawn in ink that had faded but never disappeared. And then the page that broke me. An initial statement. Taken at the hospital. Time-stamped before my parents arrived. Megan's words stared back at me. She admitted she'd taken the keys. She admitted she'd driven the car. She admitted she hadn't meant to crash it. And then, in smaller writing, almost like a plea, she begged them not to tell our parents. Below it, a different hand. Parents request modification of report for insurance purposes. Amended version approved. I felt like the room tilted. 11 years collapsed into a single horrifying clarity. Every accusation, every check I'd written, every night I'd gone to sleep believing I deserved my life. It hadn't been confusion or a misunderstanding. It had been a decision. They'd known, all of them. The clerk watched my face carefully now. "This doesn't match what's on file digitally," he said slowly. "No," I whispered. "It doesn't." He hesitated, then lowered his voice. "That happens sometimes." Sometimes. Like lives weren't built on paperwork. "I need copies," I said. "All of it. Certified." He paused again, then nodded. "It'll take a while." "Nay." I sat there as the copier hummed, each page sliding out like a verdict. My hands rested on my knees because I was afraid I might scream if I let them move. I replayed every moment I doubted myself, every time I'd apologized for something I didn't do. When he finally handed me the stack, it felt heavier than paper should. Outside, the sky was gray. Ordinary. Cleveland traffic moved like nothing had changed. I sat in my car and read the documents again. And again. And again. This wasn't just the truth. It was proof that my life had been dismantled deliberately, brick by brick, signed, filed, buried. I didn't cry. Not yet. I just sat there, breathing, realizing that the story I'd lived inside for 11 years was never mine. It had been written for me. And now, for the first time, I was holding the original draft. I didn't confront them at the kitchen table. I didn't call a family meeting. I didn't ask for explanations. Private truth had protected them for 11 years. Public truth was the only language left. I moved quietly. That was the first rule. Silence had been my training ground. I requested bank statements going back a decade, every transfer, every check, every emergency that somehow always landed on my account. I built timelines the way I'd learned at work, clean and merciless. Dates, amounts, patterns. When the numbers were laid out end to end, they told a story even my parents couldn't talk their way out of. Then I hired people who knew how to ask questions without flinching. A journalist who specialized in community fraud. A reconstruction expert who could turn physics into certainty. I didn't tell them my name at first. I told them the facts, the documents, the contradictions, the buried report. They didn't hesitate. "This is big," the journalist said, voice tight with interest. "And ugly." "Good," I replied. "It needs to be." The gala was already on the calendar. An annual charity fundraiser at a country club in Cleveland. White linens, string lights, silent auctions. Megan had been the face of it for years. The brave sister, the inspirational survivor, the reason donors opened their wallets and felt virtuous doing it. I offered to sponsor the entire event. My mother's reaction was instant delight, barely masked as gratitude. "Oh, Lauren," she said, pressing a hand to her chest. "That means so much to Megan." "It does," I agreed. "I just have one condition." They froze. "I want to speak," I said. "During the main program?" A beat of silence. A glance between my parents. Megan's smile tightened, but she nodded. "Of course," she said sweetly. "You've earned that." Earned. The word tasted bitter. The night of the gala, the club glowed. Chandeliers reflected off polished floors. Megan's photos lined the walls, documenting her journey from tragedy to triumph. I watched donors admire them, nodding, murmuring about resilience. No one noticed me yet. That was fine. When my name was announced as the primary sponsor, heads turned. Applause rippled. I walked to the podium slowly, aware of every step, every breath. My parents sat in the front row. Megan sat beside them, radiant, composed, ready to receive more praise. I smiled. "For 11 years, I began, voice steady. "You've known me as the sister who caused the accident." A murmur moved through the room. "I believed that too," I continued. "Tonight, I'm here to share the full story." I clicked the remote. The screen behind me lit up. First, the gas station footage. Time-stamped. Me inside. Megan in the car. The room stilled. Then the witness statements appeared, line by line. The seat measurements. The diagrams. The reconstruction video, clear and clinical, showing exactly how the crash happened and who was behind the wheel. My mother stood up. "This is inappropriate," she hissed. The video kept playing. I turned back to the crowd. "For 11 years, I paid for a crime I didn't commit." I gestured to the screen as financial records appeared. Totals climbing, year after year. "Over half my income. Every year, every excuse." Megan rose from her chair. "Turn this off," she said sharply. "You're confused." "Confused?" I asked calmly. "Then explain the original police report." The scanned document filled the screen. Unedited, unamended. Her statement, her words. A gasp swept the room. My father lunged toward the stage, but security intercepted him. Donors stood, chairs scraped, phones came out. Someone shouted, "Is this real?" "It is," the journalist said from the back, already filming. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. "Every donation made in Megan's name was based on false information," I said. "That's not inspiration. That's fraud." The room erupted. A woman near the front demanded her money back. A man yelled for the police. My mother cried out my name, but it sounded hollow now, panicked. Megan stared at the screen like it had betrayed her personally. Sirens cut through the noise. Officers entered, radios crackling, eyes scanning the chaos. An event coordinator tried to restore order. Failed. Cameras flashed. Reporters pressed forward. I stepped away from the podium. My hands were shaking now, but not with fear, with release. For 11 years, they had controlled the story. Tonight, the story was no longer theirs to manage. As the officers approached my family and questions began to fly, I stood still, watching the illusion collapse in real time. The lights, the applause, the curated sympathy, all of it unraveling under the weight of documents they thought no one would ever see. I didn't feel victorious. I felt awake. And for the first time since the accident, I understood something with absolute clarity. The truth doesn't whisper. It waits for the moment when silence is no longer an option. The fallout didn't arrive all at once. It came in waves, each one heavier than the last. By the next morning, the gala was no longer a charity event. It was a crime scene replayed on every local channel. Investigators returned with warrants. Bank accounts were frozen. Donations were traced. Statements were taken. The same people who once praised my parents' strength now stood at a distance, whispering, avoiding eye contact, afraid guilt might be contagious. My parents were questioned separately. For the first time in my life, they didn't sit united. They didn't control the room. They didn't control the story. The charges came quickly. Insurance fraud, charitable fraud, falsifying records. Years of decisions condensed into legal language that left no room for excuses. Megan lost everything even faster. Her accounts vanished overnight. Sponsorships disappeared. The posts that once celebrated her courage turned into screenshots used as evidence. Invitations stopped. Her name became radioactive. The same audience that once applauded her now replayed the footage again and again, watching her stand up from a wheelchair she didn't need, watching her face when the truth appeared behind her. She called me once. Her voice was hoarse, angry, afraid. "You destroyed my life," she said. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't argue. "No," I replied. "I stopped paying for the lie that built it." She hung up. The house I grew up in went quiet. No more performances. No more rehearsed sighs. Just the sound of consequences settling in. For years, they told me family meant sacrifice. Now I understood what they really meant. Family meant someone had to bleed so others could stand tall. This time, it wasn't me. My job called 3 days later. Not with concern, with opportunity. They'd watched everything unfold, the evidence, the planning, the restraint, the execution. "You see risk differently," my director said. "We want you leading, not hiding." The promotion came with a title, a raise, and something far more unfamiliar. Respect. Not the conditional kind, the earned kind. I applied to MBA programs the same week. Boston felt right. Far enough to breathe. Close enough to belong. When the acceptance email arrived, I stared at it for a long time, waiting for the old reflex. The voice that said I didn't deserve it. It never came. I moved out of my basement apartment in Ohio with one suitcase and no apologies. My new place had windows that let sunlight spill across the floor in the morning. Real light. The kind I'd forgotten existed. I left the boxes unpacked for days, just to prove to myself that nothing was demanding payment anymore. On the drive east, the highway stretched open and quiet. No one chasing, no one calling, no guilt-riding shotgun. Ohio faded behind me. Not like a place I was fleeing, but like a chapter finally closed. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't triumphant either. I was free. Free from the version of myself that lived on spreadsheets and shame. Free from a role I never chose. Free from the belief that love required self-destruction. I learned something in those 11 years that no degree could have taught me. Guilt only works on the innocent. The guilty always find a way to justify themselves. The truth didn't just clear my name, it gave me my life back. If you've stayed with me from the beginning of this story to the end, thank you. I hope it reminds you that silence is not loyalty, and sacrifice is not the same as love. Sometimes the bravest thing a woman can do is stop carrying a burden that was never hers. And as the year comes to a close, I wish you a peaceful, warm, and meaningful Christmas wherever you're listening from. May the holidays bring you clarity, courage, and a little light of your own. If this story moved you, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. There are many other women out there with stories just as powerful, just as painful, and just as freeing. Their voices matter too.